Hello and welcome back to the code-driven programming bootcamp. Hi Nora.
Hi.
In this video, it's going to be a short one, I think, and we are going to talk about CSV files and how to process them. So let me share the screen. In the slides, it's in the CSV chapter. It's not really in the beginning of the slides, so just look for CSV among the slides. And this is the CSV chapter. And let's look at a CSV file. So this is a CSV file. Okay, CSV stands for comma separated values. It's basically a text file that has rows in it, and each row, the fields are separated with usually a comma. In this specific case, though, they are separated with a semicolon. So I can show you some extra things. In general, these CSV files, we call them CSV files, but because originally they were separated with commas. But these days, sometimes people separate it with a semicolon, sometimes with a tab character, sometimes with a pipeline, so the vertical character. It all depends, okay? And basically these are tables. Like if you think about like an Excel file, except that in an Excel you can have all kind of extra features like color and other things, size of the font, and this is just plain text. Now, usually people, when they look these values, they have no clue what they are, but you will probably, and that's sort of you probably already understand what the values mean here, at least the words. So just in case all other people who are wondering, these are these are the
Characters.
dwarfs, the characters, yeah, the 7 dwarfs from Snow White, and all kind of other characters in the story in Hungarian, without the apostrophes, just so you don't have to. The general public doesn't have to deal with them because Nora can handle that. And then there is a number here, just random numbers, which, as you can see, these are the 3rd value in each row. And it was a long story that a long time ago I saw some kind of example like this, that someone asked how to sum the numbers which are the 3rd values in this file, in such a file. And then that was a long time ago. But in general, you might receive files this way, and in many times you need to generate files like this, but that's sort of the easy part. But the slightly harder part is reading them. How can you read them? And here first, I show you the naive way how to read them. And I'm calling it naive because it doesn't work all the time. Okay, but it's sort of the one that people usually will think the first time they see a CSV file. So we are importing. Oh, I didn't fix it. Yeah, I didn't fix it here. Okay, good opportunity to show you that you can import several modules on one line. Okay, I thought that I'm going to fix it, that I fixed it, but in this example, no. So it doesn't matter, you can say import sys and then next line import CSV, or you can say it in one line. Doesn't matter in general. I prefer to have each import actually on one line, but this slide was apparently created before I decided that that's my preference. Then this is just the regular thing that I'm checking the command line if I have exactly 2 parameters, and if not, then I'm complaining. So this is the usage. So I'm basically printing out the name of the script and then just the word file name, so the user will understand that I'm expecting a file name on the command line.
What is the sys.stderr.write?
Oh, okay. This is just an old example. So, oh, that's a long story. Okay, I'll tell you after the CSV. Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about it. If I already have this example, then let's talk about it. So, generally, when you run a program on the command line, it opens 2 output channels on the screen. One is called standard output. The other output channel is standard error. Okay, and both are open to the screen. And normally, if you call print, then it will print out on the channel that's called standard output. But if you would like to, your program would like to report something which is erroneous, an error, a warning or something, that usually you should send it, print it out to the standard error channel, which by default will be the same place. So you won't, normally you won't notice the difference. But there are tools, and I think I'm going to delay that explanation in a separate place, that you can separate these channels. So then you will be able to hide basically all the errors and see only the output, or save all the errors in a file and things like this. So apparently in this case, for some reason, I use this example, printing out to the standard error this warning, okay? And then exit the program. Okay, so we got over this. Nothing to do with CS.
You.
Okay, we got, sorry?
I just said thank you for the explanation.
Yeah. So nothing to do with CSV actually, this STDR, okay? And so we have the file name now, which is coming in the sysrv1, which is the parameter after the script was running. And then we have a counter, basically somewhere where we're going to sum these numbers, because now, right now, all we want to do is sum these numbers on in the third field. We open the file just as we were opening it normally with regular open. We have a file handler, and then go over line by line. So this is just row by row we go over. We remove the new line from the end, even though we are actually not dealing with the end, but why not? Okay, so for this specific case, I wouldn't need it really. Then I use split, okay, because I have a string separated with semicolons, so I can split it up. So I get now in this row variable, basically the list of the fields in the current line. And then in this row, I know that it's element 2. Okay, the third element basically. So element 2 is the one that I'm trying to sum up. Okay, obviously I have to know what is the layout of this file, so that the column 3 is the number that I'm summing in. And just to also to clarify, I'm saying here column, but you don't really see the column here because it doesn't look like a real column. It just, we know that this is the third value in each one of the rows. Okay, and then I take that value, convert it into integer, and add it to this counter. And at the end, I'm just printing it out. So let me find terminal. I'll open a new terminal and bring it here. I forgot to do that earlier. Work, slides, Python, examples, CSV. I think that's where we are. And then I can run the Python command. And if I remember, then the program is called read CSV split, read CSV split, and the input file is now called plain CSV, and it gives me 126. Okay, actually, if I edit the file, so read CSV split, I had this line uncomment. I uncomment this line, so we see what is in the rows. So what we now see is that on each iteration we read in the row and then split it up, and each iteration we have one row. Okay, so we're not collecting in that row all the things. It's every time it's a new one, which is quite useful because if the file is huge, we still only need the memory for the biggest part of the memory is when the biggest memory need is when we have the longest line basically, and that's it, not the whole file. Okay, so this is sort of the naive. So actually, let me leave it in here. So let's go on and see what else. So in CSV, actually, we could have here, you see, we have a field where we have now Hofer, Herke, and Alma in the same field, and it's in quotes. And the reason we have to put it in quotes is because within the value itself, we have a semicolon. Okay, so you can imagine in an Excel file, you can put any character there. You don't think. And if you save that Excel file into a CSV format, where you have the separators as a semicolon, and if you had a semicolon in there, then somehow we had to mark it. So now this is one problem. An even bigger problem that, again, if you think about Excel files, you can have in a what are these boxes? The
cells.
Cells. Okay, sorry. The cells. You can in each cell. You can also have new lines. So you can have some text with new line in it, and then that's it. So in the next example, here we have the same field, but now it also has a new line in it. And you can imagine that our previous solution wouldn't work on either of them, because here it won't notice that there are quotes around here. It will just notice the semicolons. And here too, it will think that this is one line and then this is a separate line. So if I try to run this program, but this time with quotes, this is the input file, then you can see that at one point it has this strange row. So it didn't notice the first element, or the second element was this quote Hofer, Herke, and then space Alma quote. Okay, so, and then of course we also got an error when we're trying to use this string as a number. And the same with what was the other one? New lines. Okay, same problem. Okay, now we have a row, an element which is an empty space. It's just a mess. Okay, so sorry. So what I'm saying here is that the original solution with the split works if the CSV file is nice and plain and doesn't have anything extra. But once we have these extra things, then we are in trouble. And we can't solve it easily with our basic tools, but luckily Python provides a module which is called, surprisingly, CSV, okay, that can read CSV files in a totally generic way. So what do we use this? We import the CSV module. Again, I have the same thing here. It doesn't matter. It's just getting the file from the command line. File name here. And again, here too, I open the file just as regularly as I did earlier. And then I call the csv.reader, give it the file handler that I already opened, and give it the definition that what is the delimiter. I think the default is a comma, but you can set how the CSV will look at the delimiter, so what separates fields. And then I get back something which is a reader. Okay, it's an object that can read rows. And now I can iterate over this RD. So it behaves quite similar to the FH, that you can iterate over it. And you can iterate over the rows of it. But this time, these rows are not the original rows of the file. These rows are already the logical rows. So if you go back to the previous slide, in this case, this was a row, and this is a physical row, and this is a separate physical row. I mean, that's how it's in the file. But logically, this is one row. So if you take the logic of CSV, because of the here, and how does CSV know that the quote started here and didn't end it? So apparently there's a new line and when the next quote comes, that's the end of this field. So that's how it understands that they belong together. Okay, and of course, if let's say we had a file where I don't have the second one because it was left out, then there's going to be an error message here. Okay, actually I've never checked it, I think. But, we can take a look at it how it looks that way, that time. Okay, So this is how this reader can read the logical lines. And now you get this row back, but the row is already a row is already a list basically that has elements, and you can index the elements based on the columns. So you can get a column, third column by saying row 2. But this time it goes on the logical part, and you didn't have to use the split. Okay, so let me actually, so let's try this first. So it's called read CSV. I can run the same program on the plain CSV file. And I think I need to slightly change the size of the screen, because later on in the video, people won't see at the last line. Okay, so let me, yeah, okay. So on the plane, it worked well. And then if I run the same with quotes, that was the second file. So it worked well. And here at the top, I'm just printing out how the split created the rows. So that's only for showing. And the same works with newline as well. And actually, if you can see that it represents the newline with a \n, and we are printing it out. Okay, so now it works, and let me actually check it. What happens is that with newline, what happens if I, let's say, forget this second quote? Okay, so, well, it's interesting. It didn't complain itself. So what it complained only is that when I tried to access row, it didn't complain. It created this thing. So it read the whole content of the file. That's strange. Anyway, that's already your homework then, to check out how to notice it earlier. I'm quite sure that the CSV has some module has some ways to recognize if reading a line is correct or not. To enforce, oh, I am almost sure now. Let me check. Read CSV. I'm not sure if that's the one, but let's try this one. So there is another flag called strict, and let's give it the value true and try to run this again. But right, sorry, with new lines. In the meantime, I fixed this. So right, yes. So now this time we get a CSV error, unexpected end of data. So now the CSV reader was more strict, and apparently this way it found that there is something incorrect. So we started with the quotations and we never found the end of it. Okay, so it might be better to use this flag as well to ensure that we verify slightly that the format of the CSV file is correct. And I'm sure you can come up with all kind of other problems that you have to check how does the CSV module deal with them. But for now, that's enough. We can come up with other examples and then add to the slides. But that's it, okay? But you remember that we also had files previously. For example, the CSV file, we already dealt with CSV files, but without the module. For example, this one, where we had the name of the actors in Monty Python with their date of birth. And in this one, the interesting part was that the content of the field, or the title, there was a title for each column. At the first line, there was the title for each column, which in this case was a plain string, but it could be also something with spaces and longer, whatever. And I see, and in this example, I used comma to separate them. So we can read the same way as we did it earlier, row by row, and index the elements by their location, element 0, element 1, element 2. But the CSV module actually allows us an easy way, or provides us an easy way to read them into small dictionaries. So we're still reading in row by row, but first of all, it will skip the first row because that's just the title. And then for each row, it will create a small dictionary where the key is the title, so the value from the first row, and the value is from the current row. And the way to do it is that here I get, apparently here I was even lazier, so I just hard-coded the name of the password to the file. I will fix this so I can also give it on the command line. And it won't even run now because it's relative to another place, okay? I open the file as usual, but this time, instead of using the reader, you remember this was csv.reader earlier, now I'm using the csv.DictReader. Give it the file handler, tell it what is the delimiter, and all kind of other these parameters of it that I might want to provide. I get back this reader object. And now when I'm iterating over, what I get back is each row is now actually a small dictionary that looks like this. Okay, and then it's much easier. Now I know that if I know that the column name F is F name, then I can easily access the field F name, and I don't have to care in which column is it. So if the author of the CSV file changes the order of the columns, I don't care, as long as I can trust
how come in the printed dictionaries F name ended up at the end? Is it just because there is no particular order in?
Okay, so let's try this. It was read Monty, right? Read Monty.py. This is the file, and I'm just changing this so it will be able to run here. Later on, I'll change this. Okay, so this time it's different, right? So here it was L name, born F name, sorry?
It's consistent between the rows, so the way it does it every time is the same. But
you remember you asked me a long time ago if about the order of the keys in the dictionaries.
Yeah.
And then I told you don't rely on it being. So I'm almost sure that when I created this slide a couple of years ago, that time the order wasn't fixed yet.
Right.
Okay. So basically, I got back more or less random order. Okay. But I also, you can see it's more or less because they are actually in the same order.
Yeah, it's one of them.
But okay, so that's just that's my guess. Okay, I don't know what's the reason it came out this way. But now that I run it, it gets something else, which is probably the insertion order.
Right.
Okay. Otherwise, I have no other explanation here. Right. So just to remind that thing, so that's the reason I wouldn't rely on order, because some people might use this in older versions of Python where the order was different or unreliable or whatever. So if you can enforce newer versions of Python, then okay. So that's about this type of reading. Now you remember we could pass, so I'm just back here, I could pass the delimiter or something. There are all kind of these attributes. So even though people, I don't know, have you encountered CSV files earlier? Have you used the CSV files?
I have, but I haven't worked with them a lot. So mostly what we get is already Excel files.
Yeah. So
rather than CSV.
Okay. So I mean, most of the people who work with CSV files think that, okay, so you can change the delimiter and that's it. in fact, there are like 7 different things that you can change that, I mean, they're really, really strange. And one of them is delimiter, and then what is the double quote? That is not always double quote apparently. I know no idea what are these. Okay, I just remember that I saw this strict, and now we used it. So apparently this makes the parser stricter. Okay, so these are all kind of these things. Now, why there are what we call dialects in CSV. So there is the plain CSV where you have comma and you use double quotes and whatever. So, but there's other types where you have tabs and let's say single quote around the values. Okay, apparently these are called dialects. So different sets of attributes, they are called dialects. And the CSV module already have built in these dialects, one called Excel, an Excel tab, Unix. That's it. Three dialects. Okay, and you can say you can use this list dialects, and you can basically decide that instead of manually describing, okay, this is my attribute and this is that attribute, you can just say in the CSV, okay, this file is in this kind of dialect. Okay, probably not very interesting if I think about it. Okay, that's it about CSV files. So we don't have any more. Do you have any questions about them?
No, this seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, so let's just give you, I think I have 2 exercises here just to play a little bit with the module. One of them is to create, basically recreate the same script that we already created once, that reads in this Monty Python file and then allows us to access it this way. Okay? And then another one to access it in a slightly different way. Okay, basically to read in the CSV file and then build up something that allows you to access the data. And here I just made up this exercise now just to get an CSV file and tell us if all the rows have the same length. And if not, then what is the outlier? Okay, nothing very interesting. Okay, so that's it for now. And soon we are going to get and talk about another chapter. Okay, thank you very much for watching and see you next time.
See you.